Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our blended learning professional development. Today, we're going to talk about lessons learned from these 9 weeks of teaching and learning from home. My name is Sarah Schroeder, and I'm a faculty member in the University of Cincinnati School of Education. I'm also an online school mom and an instructional designer. So I saw this quote when I first started thinking about what I had learned during these 9, 10 weeks of remote teaching and learning. And it really stuck out to me, this quote from Justin Paramenter, a 25-year veteran teacher. And he said the burden of trying to adapt everything I'd been doing, manage my own kids' learning, handle an insane amount of communication, and do it all with the added stress of living under a deadly pandemic just came crashing down on me. I can't do this anymore. I thought to myself, this is not sustainable. Now, I don't know about you, but I reached this point about once a week during the last 10 weeks. And I'm sure all of us have tried to keep up with everything. We've tried to adapt everything. We want our students to have that same experience remotely that they were having in our classroom. We want them to learn. We also need to parent, and we need to take care of ourselves, and we need to communicate with our colleagues, and all of that on top of a pandemic could just be completely overwhelming. So, the one thing I had to learn during this pandemic was, first, I am a parent. So, the first thing I had to do was take care of my kids. And my daughter's been in online school for 3 years. So, she constantly surprises me at her ability to problem solve and troubleshoot and take care of herself. And she has really risen to the occasion over the last 3 years. Now, it wasn't like that always. We had some tears and struggle at the beginning. We still do every once in a while. But she has surprised me every day with how much independence she can have when she is directed in the right way by her teachers. My son, on the other hand, is a sixth grader, and he shifted to remote learning during the pandemic. Now, he struggled. He's used to a classroom where the teachers guide him throughout the day, where they coordinate their schedules, they make sure the students know exactly what they're supposed to be doing every minute, and he follows that schedule. He's a big compliance kid. So he likes to be told what to do and when to do it. So in a remote environment, that independence that he was never taught just completely overwhelmed him. And he was really struggling with keeping up with his work. So this straight A student went to really struggling all of a sudden overnight. So I learned as a parent that this environment is hard on our kids, it's hard on us, and that really we have to become a coach. So, this is my son in one of his few live meetings with his teachers. And what he was really looking for was some guidance and some support. And not necessarily, hey, what did you do over your weekend? But he was really looking for, what questions do you have about the material? Here, let me go back over it for you in a really simple way. Let's talk about it. He wanted some work together with his classmates. And that didn't happen a lot. And he was really craving that. So I learned that as a parent, coaching my child at home and with my daughter in fully online school, she got that a lot from her teachers. Daily, she had live meetings with various teachers, and they coached them through the content. They gave them Q&A time. They had a few minutes of social time, but overall they really focused on application and practice, and that was really helpful. And as a parent and a coach at home, I had never seen my son learn that entire learning process from start to finish. I'd seen homework, right? So I'd seen reteaching, I had seen practice, but trying to pick up something new, watching his frustration, having to ask him the right questions to encourage productive struggle was really hard. And I needed that time to do that. And I needed to make that a priority, even when I was trying to work a lot of hours from home. So I definitely learned I needed some help from his teachers in those things. The other thing I had to think about was that I'm also a teacher. So my students flipped to remote just like all of the K-12 did. Now, my classes are educational technology courses, and I learned as a teacher that building everything into my learning management system, building all of my content, all of my in-class activities in there, and doing it all before the semester started was a godsend. It was an absolute lifesaver because my classes just shifted seamlessly to an online environment. Now, I did learn that I had to have some FaceTime with those students to coach and go through drafts and provide feedback with them. I couldn't just put things online and leave it at that. I had to collect data and I had to find out how they were doing. So we took a 3-hour class session, we cut it to 1 full hour a week in a live meeting, and then a second hour of office hours for those that wanted one-on-one support and help with projects and had questions, and that worked beautifully. So I learned as a teacher, I had to give myself a break and do a little trial and error, but I also needed that face time with my students, and I need to front load my class with blended content so that when we do need to shift, whether it's for an individual student who may have a health problem or it's for an entire class during a pandemic, I can do that very easily, and my students already know the tools, they've already learned how to use them, they're used to me facilitating them, and they can shift easily too without anxiety and threat that they would have faced if we hadn't done that before the pandemic. So I also learned some things from NPR as I was reading and poking around on the internet. One of those things was that we have discovered that the digital divide is absolutely real. So I have students that did not have internet at home, and I was unaware of that. We have students who don't have electricity, who are living in campgrounds. We have students who don't have internet, don't have individual devices, may not have any device at all other than a cell phone. And so that digital device, especially data, is very, very real for many of our students. The other thing we learned was that teaching remotely absolutely can be just as exhausting as face to face. And I think people think it's easier because you're sitting at home, but there's new stressors. There's Zoom fatigue. There's having to be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or believing that we do and not setting boundaries. So that can all be extremely exhausting. We also have learned that providing special education has become an enormous challenge and really is taking more time, more effort, and more tools, and all of us working together to meet the needs of those students on IEPs and 504 plans. We've also discovered that teachers are making connections any way they can. And that means picking up a phone if you need to. That means scheduling one-on-one meetings with students, emailing, sending out surveys to both parents and students and getting feedback. All of those things that they need to do. Using Twitter, using email, sending out a classroom newsletter every week so that you have a really clear checklist. Those connections with parents and students are critical. But then we also have to make those connections with our colleagues because those are critical too. And it's important for teachers to see their students and for kids to feel seen. So we want our students to feel like they are still important to the teachers in the school. We need the teachers to reach out and have some FaceTime with them. And that doesn't mean telling them about your weekend every Monday. It means really hearing about what they're struggling with, about the structure or about the content or about the activities or what they want. So the students need to feel seen. They need feedback on their work and they need to feel that what they're doing is meaningful. We also learned that a lot of schools initially, their top concern was not academics. It was that social, emotional support and health of their students. So we learned that Maslow's before Bloom's is really important because once we meet those basic needs of our students, they're much more likely to learn. So, our personal lessons beyond NPR and all of the research is just to make sure everyone can log in and find stuff. I'm a technology teacher, and my son's classes didn't have a home base where everything was listed with clear checklists and that everything was submitted the same way. So, it made it very, very hard for us to find stuff, and we lost several assignments in the mix. You need to keep your parents informed, and that means send them an email once a week with a very clear checklist, a little classroom newsletter, maybe a video explaining what your other students are going to do this week. Even in a face-to-face classroom, this is incredibly important to foster support and communication with parents. We need to really focus on pursuing excellence, not perfection. None of us are perfect. We all need to give ourselves a break, and our students aren't perfect either. So we need to make sure that we don't make them feel shamed, but instead that we support when they're struggling and that we help them pursue excellence and not perfection. We need to ask our students what they think, and that means really ask them. So, not some open ended, canned questions once a week, but some really clear, insightful questions that foster specific answers from them. We want them to know that they can absolutely share their frustrations with us, whether it's about us, the structure of the course, the content, their classmates. We want to hear them, and we really want to ask them what they think. We want to ask them what they think about the content as well. It shouldn't just be worksheets. There should be critical thinking happening. And the more we can hear those student voices, the better, and the more they're going to feel empowered in our classrooms. And finally, we have learned that this entire situation is going to take an attitude shift long term. So that means that all of these wonderful things we're learning right now, all these benefits of remote and blended learning, we need to carry them into our classrooms in the future. We need to leverage these tools and prepare our students for digital citizenship and digital learning, because this isn't the last time they're going to be using this to learn. There are going to be opportunities in business, there's going to be opportunities in college, and they're going to need to be prepared for that. So the more we can shift our attitudes to using these new tools in productive ways in our blended classroom and mixing the best of face-to-face with the best of remote learning, the more that we are going to help our students learn and achieve their goals now and throughout life.